All right, it's October 24th, 2024. We're here for the budget review. We'll reconvene the meeting, and I ask that you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, it's looking a little different. I think they just did some change on there. There was a new upload file done, and now you're seeing it just looks a little different. Yeah, because everything's not in the same order as it was before. I mean, you don't have, and even the type is, there's not revenues expense. It's
curveball for us.
yeah, it definitely is.
Everyone see what we're talking about is that instead of having our first portion, the revenue section, and then expenditure section, now we're just like, we launch right into.
Well, and there's not the same filters. The filters that I was able to filter before between revenues and expenses, and it's not showing up like that right now. Yeah, that might be good. I don't know if maybe we can take a 10-minute recess or something even, just to try to see if we can get this sorted out.
Unless you want to start, just, I don't know if you.
Yeah, and
Just,
that'd
start
be
just
fine
in
too.
general with kind of
Yeah.
an overview before we kind of look at resources that work.
Uh,
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have Rebecca Gill here with me to answer any specific questions about planning. This is my first go-around with the current expense budget, so I'm a little bit, I'm learning.
Great.
So we have essentially the planning and building functions, the building side of it, which the bottom line budget overall operational revenue for the building is $512,700. Expenditures are at a total of $615,947. They're broken down into the salaries, wages, most of the overheads in paying, full-time positions. They also bring in some revenue through permits
Yes.
and stuff like that, so. That's the overview of the building.
Maybe we'll stick with building first. Could you talk in general, how many permits a year are you issuing?
We're issuing around 400.
400? And how
400
many,
about.
you'll kind of break down what that looks like? Is that, how many of those are remodels versus new construction
We have
versus-
single-family dwellings, we have manufactured homes, we have commercial buildings. We also have, like garages too. We have other non-residential buildings, which is our swimming pools and cell towers and stuff like that. Also, we have, I'm trying to remember what we have. And there's also re-inspections, miscellaneous, like if there's a retaining wall, and structures other than building, which are our pools. And other non-residential, like if somebody's adding on to their shop or stuff like that. So that's our breakdown that we have.
Do you have targets for, maybe, I know the board has questions probably around performance as well. Do you have targets, like once a complete application, because I know you can't say how much, you can't promise a time frame for delivering a permit when the application is not complete, but do you have a time frame of what or a performance metric you're trying to meet, that once you have a completed application, the time frame for delivering that?
Once the permit tech deems it complete, it is up to 2 to 3 weeks to get that permit out. So it goes from there.
For a single-family home?
For all our permits. Because once she deems it complete, it comes to me, I do the zoning, and then from there, I give it over to the building department, and that's the last step.
I would
And my-
assume that's unless there's some sort of additional SEPA work, or, because there's some types of projects I assume you can't completely deliver in 2 to 3 weeks once it's complete, no?
If we run into any problems, sometimes they may be in crossing over a canal easement that we would need permission from South Columbia Irrigation District. They only meet once a month, so they have to go over there and do an application and for a right-of-way. So that sometimes holds people up. But we do our best, try to get them out 2 to 3 weeks is our turnaround time.
If there's a planning element to that, I'll say, such as a conditional use permit or something to that effect, that could lengthen it from 90 to 120 days.
Yes. If it's found that's not, once I get to it, when it gets to me, then I look for zoning, and if either the height of the accessory building is too high, or they need, on-site sewage evaluation, then it's kicked back to the permit tech to get all that information.
Do we have a process that when somebody comes in for a pool, we have a checklist for them?
Correct.
So we
We
have-
now do, yes. We have for single-family dwelling, commercial, FAS, swimming pools, and mechanical.
And what is the trend right now on our, like the 2 to 3 weeks? Are we getting better on that, or is that growing right now?
It really all depends on how many come in, and if somebody is on vacation, that may slow it down a bit.
But as far as a trend, like 400 permits, is that in line with last year?
Usually that's the average every year.
And
And
the timeframe is trending better or worse right now?
Right now, it's trending pretty good. We're within 1 week. It really does help when those permits are deemed complete and then they're moved on. They're so much easier. It's in the very first submittal in. that problems arise.
So what's that time frame? To explain that one a little bit more. Materials come to you, they're not complete. How does that process, and what's the duration of that? What happens during that
It really all
timeframe?
depends. We do send it to the contractor if he's the one, if they're the ones that we have the contact with. Then we let them know this is, let's say, we need an on-site sewage evaluation. It usually takes the health department a good 4 to 6 weeks to get something done. So we just have to sit and wait until that comes in. And as soon as it comes in, then it starts moving again.
Does the checklist, is it pretty spelled out for the
Yes, it is.
contractor to know how to deem whether or not they're going to need that sewer evaluation? That's pretty
Yes.
concise?
That we try to get on it right away as soon as it's sent over to the planners to look at the site plan.
I just mean for the contractor, if a contractor comes in to pick up, you know, the checklist packet, is it a pretty complete
Yes.
thing? So the contractor should be able to know that everything that's necessary.
Yes, it is.
Does this is always that very unique situation where you have a separate entity, legal body, the two of you sit on, which is for septic. Is there ever a discussion about integrating them, that function more physically into and with, through some interlocal or something, into the two planning departments, into Benton and Franklin more? Would that expedite, would that help? Because I know that, you know, from a customer service perspective, sometime, you know, we're sending them to multiple venues then as well.
Yes, we are. As far as for us, we do have one person that's handling us here in Franklin County. So that's the person we deal with all the time on different.
Yep, but they're not embedded in your office. They are
No,
physically
they are.
located over in Kennewick.
Correct, correct.
So we're going through the new regs with the septic systems with the health department right now. This is something that we can bring up to the board, that we need to work better together, timing-wise, because it's an injustice to our constituents to have to wait a month before they can keep moving on in their project. My son's going through this right now, building a house. And, yeah, it draws out everything.
Yes, it
And when you're
does.
trying to get a roof on a house to protect it from the weather, timing is everything.
Yes, it is.
So we'll bring this up to the Board of Health when we're over there for our next meeting.
Right? That would be good.
Not unique to this county, that issue, or even when you are in the same umbrella, but environmental health is in a different department, it's not unique, believe, yeah.
Just FYI, I think we have I think we have the same information as we had before. It's just the filter was changed from, now it's filtering on like every single object code instead of before we had filters for revenues, expenses and stuff. So something was up with the upload file that from a recent upload file. So I think Jeff was going on figuring out that. But so I think everything's here. There's still the requests here. There's $200 increase on utilities, $3,500 increase on tuition, schooling, $2,500 on office and operating supplies, and this is only on the building side right now. And then $2,009 on equipment rental, $1,350 on dues and subscriptions. Book subscriptions, $1,000, addressing labels, $150.
So this is all the expenditure side.
Yes, I have it filtered for just I manually went through and highlighted all the expenditure items in this so that I'm only pulling that right at the moment.
Maybe, I didn't see personnel, I don't know where that one,
There is before there was a thing to filter on revenues and
I don't know if you can find the personnel cost side. Staff. Which is which I assume is the big expenditure.
Is that the total for 2025 on the, is 10,709?
10,709 for the total, for the building department.
Right.
Okay, well. I don't know what else
You got the master sheet.
we do proceed, I think, to keep talking about your next fund.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no questions on this, I mean, we can move to
Right.
the planning.
There's no salaries and wages in this one. Okay, maybe talk about the functions of this budget and
Here's the
Talk-
revenues.
yeah, so Craig, could you guys talk a little bit more about the function of this specific budget?
Okay, for the planning side of it. So we have, two planners right now. We're advertising for a director. This largely pays for their time and benefits. And, comprehensive planning activities. They spend a lot of time on.
I think this is showing revenue to start with, correct?
Yeah, you have your revenues here. So I will say that there were, Derek had me add in, or he added in, I added in a couple lines for a couple state grants that that you guys were looking to receive this year for House Bill 1181 climate and then a comprehensive plan update. The House Bill 1181 was 202,000, and then 45,000 for the other. Those ones are not in the baseline budget yet. I didn't move those over to accepted yet until there's some corresponding on the expenditure side. There's some corresponding expenditures for the same amounts that would be added in at the same time as these revenues. I didn't want to add in the revenues. It would make us look better than we are because I hadn't added in the expenditures at the same time.
And I think we're waiting to find out how much we're actually going to get and how we're going to expend it. Most of it will be for long-range planning issues, including possibly some transportation planning and comprehensive plan work.
I can flip over to the expenditure side if there's no other questions on that.
Will we get the when is the comp plan, the bulk of the comp plan process going to, or is this probably under GMA? It's probably under the GMA grant, so, or the GMA section probably. So, okay.
I know this is mesmerizing.
Well, yeah, I guess we're just thankful you didn't have to do this the first 3 days.
So here are the corresponding expenditure requests related to those two grants I mentioned previously. And then there's $1,000 increase to travel being requested and $350 on repairs and maintenance. And that's it for the changes on the planning side.
Maybe what might be helpful for the board also to understand is what is the current expense transfer to planning in each of the sections? Since that's probably one of our biggest, frankly, our biggest concerns, and I don't know if that's clear.
What's the question?
How much current expense gets transferred for any of the functions in the planning department?
I mean, we have this this is a part of current expense.
Right, so, but how much does current expense subsidize the activities of planning? Can you tell that? Just general fund?
Separate from the, like, revenue they
Yeah,
take in
separate
from
from
the
revenue,
permit.
yeah, what does, for
We-
GMA, for building and for planning? I don't know if we can decipher that a bit, but get a better understanding of what we're subsidizing those activities with current expense dollars? Or road fund shift, whatever we're subsidizing it with.
As far as how much money we're taking in for applications on the planning side and the building side? Is
Yeah,
that-
and then grants from Commerce, et cetera. I'm just trying to give the board an understanding of how much just, general tax funds from Franklin County is having to subsidize each of the three functions.
Basically, the difference.
The
between-
difference,
Yeah, the difference
yeah.
between what you're getting in grants and what we're having to put into your,
How much money right now that we've taken in for as far as revenue on the planning side is, I believe it's about 25,000. On the building side, we're looking at 549,000, I believe, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Is that your question?
It is, but I
Oh,
think
okay.
we might have to do some more work. I think the board really deserves to see, what are we subsidizing this department? And the choices they can make associated with how much are they willing to subsidize this versus how much do they expect, any of those, other activities should pay for the cost, and get their comfort level associated with that.
I think I would have a much better answer for you, but I've lost my sorting
I
capability.
understand. I'm not, and I'm not sure we'd just generally be able to see that.
Well, if
But
I'm understanding it right, around $210,000?
you think that's about?
If I'm understanding
Okay.
and
Yeah,
don't trust me
yeah.
on that, it's my first
So
time
I think
through.
we probably should just dig into that a little bit more, and get it's almost a philosophical question for the board. Because if they could, the more they could recoup, but it would be at the expense of those 400 individuals that were getting permits as well. And so it starts to become a philosophical question about how much do you want the general taxpayer to subsidize these activities?
Right.
And
Versus the 400
versus the 400 permits, yeah. And it's not necessarily fair for the whole 400 permits to subsidize maybe some of our planning activities. But if a lot of those planning activities are directly also associated with permits, then should we have 100% cost recovery? Are you comfortable with 75% cost recovery, et cetera? And then that's really the same question for you all that are on the board of the health department then for environmental health. How much should there be a subsidy or not? Is it a broader public health issue, so you want to subsidize, or no, that individual should be solely responsible to pay 100% of the cost? So it's kind of a philosophical question about a number of types of times when we have a fee or a permit, but when you're in a deficit, it gives you that opportunity to think about it. And it's obviously not popular to raise fees. I
Right.
certainly understand that. But you're doing that at the expense of something else. So we'll follow up a little bit more about that.
I mean, looking at the adopted 2024 budget, there were revenues of 602,000, this is planning and building. And then expenditures of $1,083,000, so
Okay.
almost a $500,000 difference there.
My mistake.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it could be different for this current proposal. So that's a hefty subsidy.
So,
And there are jurisdictions that will argue that a large part of the growth management plan is directly related to what you are, to benefit those that are going to get permits as well for zoning purposes. But you can't make money in the permitting process, but you can get philosophically, do you want to subsidy at 50%, or do you want to get closer to 75%, or something like that? But that becomes your obligation then to talk about raising fees, which is equally unpopular.
so is the way to summarize that, if we had 400 permits, so 2023, roughly 400 permits? Is that accurate?
Between 350 to 400, yes.
Okay, so 500,000 divided by 400 permits is 1,250. So right now, we're subsidizing the process. $1,250 permit is the general taxpayer's subsidy of each permit.
And that also could be part of the planning process as well. So you'd have to get probably a little bit more granular to make that assertion, but you certainly are at some degree.
Right now, as a bottom
Yep.
line, that's
Yep,
what that
that's
means.
as a bottom line. Yep,
You're always going to have activities that impact the county as a whole,
yep,
and then those that
For the
are-
purpose of being able to permit.
yep.
Right, they have managed the entire process for the county versus the individual permit. We face the same thing somewhat in Public Works. We have a broader system that we take care of. There are certain things that benefit only individuals.
How much of this would be impacted by the planning and building efforts officials' time that we spend in Connell and Mesa?
Those should, I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm not 100% sure of the terms of the contract, but I think those are 100%. I think we're reimbursed by those
100% of the
cities
cost.
for the costs.
For Cornell, it's 80% of residential, 85% of commercial,
85% of what?
of the building permit that they've come up with, the building permit cost.
So that's their numbers, though. So
That's their numbers.
85% of the fees that they collect, they pay to us. But I'm talking about on our end, are we collecting 100% of what it's actually costing us to do that function? Or are we subsidizing them as well?
That's it, yeah.
That's a good question. I think we have to do some analysis
Yeah.
to see if where we're coming out on those services.
I know that in their recent budget balancing that they did, that they cut their building official. And so they were going to come and ask us to
Yes.
have a conversation about covering that on their behalf. And if we have the capacity to do it, I don't see that there's a reason that we couldn't be helpful. However, we shouldn't continue to subsidize at a higher and higher rate
Correct.
the process that they are statutorily required to do.
without adding in new requests for 2025, just baseline right now, we're 517,000 negative.
570,
517
517
in planning and building.
in 2025. So 517. So, yeah, you're going to be $1,300 per permit that we're subsidizing on a bottom line, and you're,
Does that
like-
include have you brought the revenue not in for the climate planning, but you've
I haven't-
brought the expenditure in? or
Neither
not?
revenue or expenditure
Okay,
in
great.
for that.
Okay. Sure. Definitely think something for you all to be thinking about in relationship to current expense. But those are equally tough trade-offs when you're talking about raising the cost of permits compared to subsidizing it. And there's nothing wrong with subsidizing if that's the philosophical and conscious choice of the board. Yep. So, we'll flesh this out a little bit more, because I do want to understand how much of that is subsidizing kind of our overall growth management planning activities, of which, some counties are saying that is a part of the cost of preparing for the overall cost of assuring someone can build in our unincorporated area, so. Okay. And then GMA, I think is the last one, if you want to move us to that.
are we not going to get back the ability that you had yesterday?
Not look like it.
Ryan's working on it, I think. There hasn't been any recent spending in this fund. The only, we just carried forward, the fund balance was carried forward, and then there's, I don't know if there's any plans for that or not, but
So when we get so for example, I think Franklin County will get 750,000, I think, for comprehensive planning for GMA. Do we put that into planning, or do we put this into this fund here? What's been the historical? And if we don't put it into here, I'm not sure why we continue to have this fund, or do you know?
The last time we even used this fund is when it was a couple of years ago, when Coyote Ridge, they were doing an addition onto the prison, is when we used this fund for that
Yeah.
money.
Interesting, okay.
and that's been several years
That's
back. I
been
think it's
several
been
years. Yes.
4 or 5, if not even maybe more.
Okay. So when you get the big commerce grant for the comprehensive plan update, that will go into planning.
I would assume so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although if it makes more sense to compartmentalize it, I'm from the
Yeah,
Public
I don't-
Works side, County Road, we compartmentalize everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it might be nice for the board to see, what it costs us to do growth management planning here. And does the grant itself cover it, or are we having to subsidize it as well?
Yeah, is it adequate, or does it
Yeah.
require substantial?
Investment. In the past, it was costing counties to plan. And the other factor would be interesting for us to track, because we've buried money, that's not the right term. We have had money in our professional services to defend decisions associated with the Growth Management Act. That's one of those kind of hidden costs that they might pay for our planning, but they don't pay for our litigation.
Right.
And the appeals, the cost of appeals, so,
And we're going through that right now.
yeah. Okay.
I think the one consideration if you put like that grant money in here and tracked in here is that you'd likely have to fund this with a little bit of cash flow, just because typically you're spending first and then receiving afterwards, and they've only got $6,000 in there. So I think that's one consideration you'd have to take in.
Gotcha.
Do we know what historically that has been trend year over year? This has been in since 2012,
The,
growth management.
I'm not positive when this
No,
fund
because-
No, I
started.
think we were in that, we volunteered for that earlier than that, didn't we?
When I
Like
started with planning, I think they had it, and that was back in 1995.
I think there's two questions. This fund here compared to the Growth Management Act itself, which has been actually in since 1992, but this fund has been in place for well over a dozen plus years, or
As far as I know, when I started there in 1995,
this fund was here?
this fund was.
Oh, wow, okay.
So.
Yeah. And typically, the county, we're now, I think, on a 10-year update cycle, so your bulk of your GMA expenditures for planning, unless you do the annual updates, and sometimes you're on your own to do the annual updates. For planning, we don't get the grants, except during the big renewal cycle.
Right.
And that's coming in 26, right?
I believe so.
I think
Yeah.
that's our renewal cycle, or when we're due. So we'll be starting to work on it in 2025 with adoption in 2026.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. We'll have some follow-up then, kind of some things to think about.
All right. We will do that.
What's next?
Solid waste.
Solid waste.
Okay, all right. Next batch of folders.
You've been here since 1995?
In the planning department, I started in the prosecutor's office in the child support division for a year, and then I went to, after that, I went to district court for another year, and then planning. So I've been here for 31 years.
31 years. Well, thank you.
Wow.
That's
Thank you.
impressive.
Long
Appreciate
time.
it.
Retirement is starting to look good.
That's what I thought.
Well, thank you for all your years here. Appreciate it.
I've got listed up the revenue side of the solid waste operations side of the budget.
At the 03?
Yep. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, hopefully what I got in front of me matches what's up there.
So Craig, I think one of the things that would be good for the board to fully understand is kind of the role that the county plays in solid waste. And kind of,
Yeah,
what the
we're a
functionalities
little
are.
different from most counties because we don't operate a landfill or a transfer station. So our activities are largely focused on cleanup, and the other budget, which we'll come to, is like litter pickup crew and stuff. We donate to that. So solid waste is completely funded by a Department of Ecology grants. So there's no, to my knowledge, there's no money that comes in from current expense to subsidize solid waste. It takes care of itself. So largely, we're looking at spills in the county on the roadways, and you'd be surprised how many of them we do have to deal with over the year. And we also work on it. There's a comprehensive solid waste plan that has to be in place. That's in the process right now. So Sally is part of that, and also running our solid waste advisory committee, which is the primary driver of the previous document, the comprehensive plan. And so, occasionally doing some educational outreach and things like that for people. But, we do a lot of collection of materials, so.
What is the status of the solid waste plan? And I was kind of curious to see if the board, maybe in a workshop, might, get an update on that perhaps. I'm not sure what the status of that is.
Yeah, I think they got the preliminary structure of it, and I think now they're looking to take it to a consultant to finish off the verbiage, so to speak. So I'm not sure how far along they are. It kind of, process had started several years ago, and then COVID came along, and then that was one of the things that kind of got solid waste committee kind of dissolved, and that kind of went on the back burner, and now it's, in the last year, we've got it revived and rolling again, so.
That'd be great in a workshop setting to have just what is solid waste, how does it operate, and what is our function
Yeah, we
within
can
it.
certainly arrange that. It's, mostly, like I said, we deal with various forms of waste in the county with pickup, organics. We have a big Christmas tree collection, and they hire Public Works to come and stick them through the chipper and stuff like that. So there's several programs. We work closely with Basin Disposal, since they manage the landfill for the area, and of what to do with these materials and where to take them and things like that. So Sally can probably give you a lot better comprehensive statement of what they do than I can. We mostly, my involvement with it usually is when there's some sort of spill in the roadway or right of way or whatever, so.
My computer's not working right.
Are you currently involved in what's going on out there at Merrill's Corner,
What's that?
You have to be more specific.
right behind the store?
I can't find
Are they collecting stuff there, or?
They're vacuuming up gravel. I don't know what happened. But
That I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to get with Sally to see if there'd been a,
yeah, they've had it roped off, and they've had like hazmat out there.
oh,
I think it was fuel. I don't know. I'm just asking.
yeah, no, I'll have to look into that. I hadn't heard of it, so.
Okay. But as far as solid waste, it's like you said, nothing's coming in from the general fund. It's
No,
money in and money out.
it's all grant funded.
Has this got anything to do with the landfill that was once over here? Does solid waste still manage
Yes,
that?
well, it's kind of combined with County Road.
And where are we at on that?
My understanding is that the county's part of it is now done.
We're done.
Yes, I believe I signed off on the last invoice for that a couple weeks ago.
We hold no more responsibility.
Don't hold me to that as far as I know, but I've kind of heard that before. So,
But the fire is out.
yeah. I think that the county's involvement in it, Sean Sant would have more information on that. He's been running on the legal side with that. I think he was waiting to hear back from outside counsel
Okay.
that was running for that. But, yeah, I think we finally expended the $600,000 that we were supposed to contribute, that came through us through Department of Ecology. It was kind of a,
I think your budget has a small amount in the commissioner's budget for landfill closure. I ran across it somewhere.
Yeah, it was right out here, and that we used to have a landfill.
Yeah, and there was a small lingering amount of small full.
So if we're
landfill
done,
closure.
what do we do with that fund?
Well,
How do we close it
yeah,
out?
we probably should talk about the landfill closure. I think there was something in the commissioner's budget for landfill closure, wasn't there?
It's in an item
It's in an item somewhere, I can't remember.
somewhere, I don't remember.
There's a fund for it, the 180 fund.
But we're just saying if it is actually done.
If we're completed out of this, should we close out that fund?
Certainly, if there's no more, nothing more that we're gonna
We'll need
pay
to
on
talk
it,
to Sean
then-
about
Yeah,
this.
okay.
He's our legal, so we'll need to talk to Sean and see exactly where we're at to make.
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, there's a long history on it, so.
I'm gonna have, I was gonna have Teresa. Okay. Sure. Okay, you wanna do that? We'll take a quick break before we do roads.
Okay.
For folks.
Trying to get the computer back up and right.
Yeah, his computer's down. I'm gonna talk to Ryan real quick.
First done?
Oh, okay.
You need a charger?
I have a charger, it's charged.
I don't, yeah, I don't know.
Did you get, were you able to get into at least the 150? get it going. No, it's bringing a new chart.
All right, we're back from break, so we will we are back from break, so we will reconvene. And probation work crew, is that where we're at here?
Public roads.
I don't know,
I bumped ahead.
was there anything else on probation work through there?
It's pretty straightforward. We coordinate with district court and they have a grant that funds it, and we fund part of it through our activities in solid waste. So,
Okay.
Doesn't,
No money out of the general fund.
not that I'm aware of it, not on this public works side, on the solid waste side. That's grant funded as well.
and if I understand right, our road crew that picks up stuff, one of our community partners, Basin Disposal, allows us to dump that for free.
Right. Sally has a very good working relationship with Basin Disposal, and they've been
That's great.
very generous to us.
All right, so we will move on to county roads.
There's a bunch of lines, so it may be easier. I mean, the revenues are all going to be in order for the most part, so I don't know if you want to start on that side of it.
Yeah, we can start on the revenue. Let me get my, of course, I grabbed the wrong sheet. Oh, I still can't hear.
Want me to come over and help with that?
No, I don't get a code.
Oh, there we go. Expenditure. I walked out of there this morning with the revenue sheet.
Time to go home. All right.
I did not drink enough coffee this morning, I guess. Well, largely, sources of revenue for county road come from essentially three main sources. So the road levy, motor vehicle fuel tax, and federal and state grants. Kind of operationally, our budget is kind of two different beasts. On one side, we have operational costs, and on the other side, we have capital programs. The operational side is funded largely from the road levy and motor vehicle fuel tax. In fact, as far as the operational side goes, the road levy is about 80% of that budget. This is our maintenance activities. This is, chip sealing, blading, gravel replacement, et cetera. And so the road levy itself makes up about 70 to 80% of that. And it's a little hard because motor vehicle fuel tax intermingles with that a little bit. That's separate from the capital side, which is funded by grants and by matching money from the county. That matching money also comes from road levy and motor vehicle fuel tax. And it contributes roughly, general split on a grant is around 13.5%. That would probably be the average. Some are 10, some are 0, some are 20. Depends on the grant. Generally speaking, about 13.5% is generally the county's portion of that. So that's another portion of the revenue that comes from the road levy and some, maybe somewhat from motor vehicle fuel tax. The rest of the balance on the capital side is all grants. And with grants, they're earmarked for what you said you are going to do. You cannot take grant money that you said you're going to do a certain project with and do another project with. Does not work that way. You cannot do that. The other side of that too is that they are reimbursements. They are not front-end loaded grants. We have to go expend the money first, and then we get reimbursed for it at 86 to 90% of the cost.
And how long does that usually take?
It depends on whose grant is. It turns around in 2 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
It depends. Some are really good about it. You know, if we're talking FEMA, not so much. But local programs, federal grants, state grants, state PRAB is really good. RAP turns around really quick. But we, like I said, we have to, no, we don't have to have the entire funding for that project going ahead, but we have to have it at the time that we're doing a certain activity. So we generally, like when a project's in construction, we're paying the contractor usually monthly. So we have to have the money up front to make that monthly payment and then get reimbursed for it. So we're constantly, it's a cash flow situation, so we always have to have money up front to carry on with capital work. All at the same time funding our maintenance activities and our overhead engineering activities, permitting, and stuff like that. Permitting is generally completely funded on that operational side with road levy. And the road levy itself makes up 1/3 of our total budget, counting capital and maintenance. So it's a significant part of what we do. We have some other various revenue sources too that vary. We have, PILT money and things like that, payment in lieu of taxes.
So Craig, I'm looking at the screen there, and the year-to-date and the adopted budget for '24 have a big disparity there. Is that going to be caught up by the end of the year? 21 million, we're only at 8?
Oh, as far as that, I'm not familiar with Gravity very well, so that's what we've actually spent to date is 8.
And when was
So-
that?
That, it's combining, it's likely combining revenue and expense numbers, and I'm not even positive what date this is through at,
That's what I was
right
curious
at this point, so I wouldn't rely on this. This was more so for departments entering when they entered, that it was through a point in time, I think June, but I wouldn't rely on that for comparison to that.
But I do see from 22, 23, and 24, we have been putting, it's been increasing almost 2 million a year, or 4 million a year. You anticipate that again for this coming year, another
Our
4?
cost of doing business isn't going down.
No.
Materials are going up.
It could go down if we get the right guy in there.
Well,
Hey,
I wish I had
Shut
a
up.
crystal ball,
Just
but I
behave.
don't.
he didn't say that.
Yes, I did.
Okay. So yeah, that's.
You look, I would say even just look though, is one of the reasons, you look at the federal aid is up 1.1 million.
Right,
So-
that's
so-
the variance in
Yeah, so
there.
you've got some variables that are increasing revenue, and it's typically the
Right.
outside sources that are coming in.
Right.
You've got, you might get a one-time money from CRAB, or you might get one,
Right.
so the variables are probably more in what's happening on capital
Right,
than what's happening in
and that's why I warn
operations.
against, don't look at the bottom line of our budget and think, oh my God, well, he's got, 12 or $15 million or whatever, it's like we're loaded. No. Like I said, there are really two budgets embedded in this. There's an operations budget, which is fairly fixed from road levy and motor vehicle fuel tax, which, by the way, keeps going this way, not going up. And they have not, in my personal opinion, come up with a viable replacement for that revenue that's going away.
Craig, do you separate out any at least where the board could actually see the difference between what I will call maintenance and preservation budget compared to a capital budget? It may not be in gravity, but it might be something that might be helpful for the board to see some point, the separation between maintenance and preservation and capital. Because I know that one of the biggest needs is, how do we maintain and preserve the existing system while we also do capital improvements and road
Right.
repair, renovations, et cetera.
And Craig, I can bring up the 594s, 595s, or if you want just capital, or,
Yeah, if you want to show what the capital side of it, that's the easiest. I kind of did a little analysis on the maintenance side that kind of shows the different activities we do, and when we get to that, I can talk about level of service. So we have our, there's generally three phases of a project. There's preliminary engineering, which is, the front end of the project, design work, going after the grant money. So there's some of that on the front end that comes out of county pockets from the beginning. Right? When we're putting projects together, when we're getting ready to go after grants and stuff, that's all work that's done in-house, is not compensated for or replaced from grant money itself. This is money that the county spends for us to go after these capital grants. So we do this design phase, then oftentimes if we're expanding the footprint we're in, we need to acquire right-of-way from landowners and stuff. It goes through a right-of-way phase. That can be expensive and long. And then it goes to a construction phase. And they're generally phased out in that. So, we have various grant opportunities. What's the best way to put how these grants work? A lot of them are earmarked for just certain kinds of activities. They're not general, oh, here's a bag of money, go spend it. They're grants for specific things, safety objects. That's why we have, a lot of flashing stop signs, wrapped posts, upgraded guardrail. That comes from safety funding from both state and federal. But that can only be used for that kind of work.
And a question with that, safety, would that include bridge replacement?
No, that's a separate issue unto itself.
Okay.
So that we get a separate kind of grant for bridge funding, which we've been very successful lately.
Yes.
We've had several bridges that we've replaced, and we're kind of on pace. We're doing about one a year.
We got a lot to do.
Oh, yeah, we do. We got a lot of old infrastructure.
Yep.
And a lot of them are timber bridges. And we're getting to the point with some of the timber bridges where they've hit that point where they get to a certain point, they're okay, and then they go over the cliff. And we're starting, a lot of them are 70, 80-year-old bridges, and that's a long time especially a wooden bridge.
That's why I was concerned about the safety issue, because I sort of speed up when I go over them because I don't want to drop in that canal.
Well, I don't know how, I won't advise you on that practice one way or the other. But, no, bridges have their own funding, and it's all based on what their condition is.
Do you have a report that shows the entire list of bridges and their status from the
Yes,
inspections?
we actually have a
and-
map on the, we'll show you posted bridges. I don't know if it's got the sufficiency data. Federal, the bridge inspection stuff is all changing right now. We used to have two terms, functionally obsolete and structurally deficient, and everybody got nervous when they heard structurally deficient. It didn't mean that the bridge was gonna collapse, it just meant that it wasn't as good as it used to be. But structurally deficient sounds pretty horrible.
And fracture there's a whole,
Oh, yeah, there's fracture critical, there's all kinds of things. Fortunately, I don't know that we have any fracture critical bridges on our system, because most of ours are either wood or
I
concrete.
think it'd be
We've got
great for the
few
board
still.
to see a comprehensive list of,
Yeah,
of,
So
of
we
bri-
have-
of status of bridges.
84 bridges on the federal system. Anything that's over 20 feet or over is considered a bridge and goes into the Federal Register. So we have to inspect them every 2 years at least. Some of them we inspect more often, especially when they're not happy.
And we have 81.
What's that?
We have 81,
84.
84.
84 bridges, and I think approximately 40 of them are timber still. We've been processing as we go. We change them into usually bold T-girder concrete bridges. Sometimes we'll use something
Probably
else.
not the time for the question, but is there a way to go towards a template's not the right word. What word am I looking for? Where that we have prepared and we have, you know, criteria. It's a 40-foot, a 60-foot, or an 80-foot span where that we can go and kind of, I know that it's hard to say normal, but normalize the process where that it's not so expensive, because right now, the way we do it is everyone is an individual, and it's all done individually versus where it could be done where that you say, okay, I need 4 20s, 4 40s, and then we build the abutments and set it on.
Yeah, I don't know from a design standpoint that you can do that, but there are programs where you can bundle projects together, so you can go after a big group of money all at once and put out several bridges
So do
together.
39 and the 40 in one
I'm
bundle?
not a structural guy, so I don't want to go outside my boundaries of practice, but, you know, all of them, every bridge is a little different, and even though all of our structures go over canals, there are different sets of problems with every one of them, and I haven't yet to see one that they were like super identical. They kind of did that with the wooden bridges back in the day when the Bureau of Reclamation put those in. They had a template for those, but they were based on spread footings and stuff. A lot of what drives costs now, and you can argue whether it's necessary or not, is because of the seismic requirements for the state of Washington. You know, we're doing a lot more driving piles where we used to use spread footings, and that takes, you know, we have to have a geological investigation. You know, so what's the soils like? Where's this pile going to catch? Come to refusal? How much strength is the soil going to bear? Things like that. So that makes them a little bit more intensive than they used to be. And then some of our roads have kind of unique geometry, so that plays you want the good transitions into the bridges, which is hard. And we know from some of our we got some not so nice bridge approaches. They're kind of rough and knock you around a little bit. So that's another element in getting the camber right on the bridge and getting it all to kind of play nice together. Takes a little bit of extra.
Is the Bureau of Reclamation involved in any of this replacement of these bridges?
Not fiscally. We do have Article 9 agreement and it's kind of complicated how it works, so that we have permission to work inside the right-of-way, because the canal right-of-way is theirs. So we work with them to get across it.
Okay.
But
Some of the bridges already have concrete structures for a base. Can those be reused, or do you have to tear those out and replace those when you put them?
depends. It just depends on what the soils are like and how those are how the existing ones are behaving.
Okay.
You know, and it would depend really a lot on the use of the bridge and its traffic and some other factors. Sometimes that's reusable, sometimes you're better off just
Placement.
yarding it out and starting over.
Do we have issues, when you say the Bureau is not fiscally a partner in any of this component? When we interact with right-of-ways like that, is that the right way to see a Bureau crossing a right-of-way?
Yeah, and there's a long, like I said, it's Article 9. It was laid out several decades ago when the Bureau built the project and how county right-of-way and Bureau right-of-way function together. And it's largely what that document's there to take care of. So, you know, it depends on who was there first. Was the canal there first? Was the road there first? But the bottom line, if it's on the road system, it's our responsibility to handle. If it's the canal system, it's theirs to handle. So, say for instance, and this happens occasionally, we'll have the opportunity where a pipe will make more sense than a bridge. We've done this in a couple places throughout the county. If it becomes a culvert, that culvert now is their responsibility.
So let's just do it that way.
Well, yeah, that would be nice to do that, but not everything's, I'm afraid, can,
The reason for my question is, the city of Pasco recently put the Lewis Street overpass, and working with the BNSF Railway became a extraordinarily expensive and headache for them, to the point where that the way that it was treated, I don't believe it was correct. However, basically BNSF said, this is what you shall do. Mm-hmm. Do we work with BNSF, and does the Bureau treat us in that way, or do they treat us as a partner?
no, they treat us as a partner. We have a very good relationship with the Bureau and South Columbia Irrigation District. No issues on that. Railroads, well, they're the railroad.
Well, that part, while I do appreciate that, and they do have a significant role to play in our community, they have gotten to a point where they won't answer the phone. They are not responsive, having worked in the development world, and I have called every number, including 911, when there was an issue, and could not reach anybody.
Yeah.
I was to the level of I was going to shunt the track so that because of a safety issue, and just they're not responsive. Do we find them responsive as a county? Do they work well with us, or are they kind of the same way?
It's not fast, generally speaking. When we do have to work with them, we've been fortunate. We've kind of avoided that here in recent past.
And do they treat us as a partner like the Bureau does, or do they just kind of say, this is what you shall do?
It really kind of depends from individual to individual, and what office you're working with, and what you're trying to accomplish.
Because as they expand track in Franklin County, I think that's something that we should be aware of. They're expanding track in the Ryman Industrial Center, and have some other plans potentially in different places. And I know that there's the large rail project in Connell. I think that's something that we need to be very aware and of as that conversation continues.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, it's also an issue to remind your congressional delegation when there are issues, since they are much more likely to be federally regulated, that with interstate commerce, they sometimes play the trump card more than, that's probably not the right word these days, but, yeah, I knew I walked right into that one, but they exercise some more of their autonomy, more than a lot. So,
Yeah, and in
so-
some cases, just completely unnecessarily, not to their advantage or disadvantage, just because they can, and it's just not helpful.
So Craig, getting back to the bridges,
Mm-hmm.
how many of those 84 could be done by culvert?
I couldn't tell you. It just depends on what the
The
dynamics.
size of the canal?
Yeah, size of the canal, what clearance we have over the canal, what the geometry of the road is. Sometimes it works in certain situations, sometimes it doesn't. And it depends too on, you know,
So anything over 20 feet, you said, that's just about every bridge out there over a canal.
most of them. But we have several small structures. I think total we have 106 structures. So we've got 80 that are, 4 that are classified as bridges, and then the remainder are what we call small structures, which are small wooden bridges. Generally, most of them are small wooden bridges out. A lot of them are out in the dry lands, but they're just short span. Those are usually pretty good candidates. If I can replace that with a pipe, I usually do it.
Which is basically runoff. It isn't really a flowing
Right,
canal.
they don't run a lot, and it depends where they serve and things like that. But if, for instance, they're like on a primitive road, I'd much rather put a pipe in there, even if under a strange circumstance where there's a whole bunch of water at once and we lose the culvert. A lot easier to come back there, drop the culvert back in, bury it, and open up the road again than it is to deal with a bridge that's in a similar state of problem.
Right. Okay.
The
Good-
My
Taylor,
personal opinion, professional opinion anyway.
the
Sorry.
Taylor Flat siphon, has that worked well?
Yeah, I believe it has. Are you talking up on,
Just above Cherry?
yeah. Yeah, that was, gosh, when did we do that? That was in,
About 15 years ago.
yeah. Yeah, I know, it was.
Actually, it's more than that.
So-
That's 22 years ago.
Yeah, as far as I know,
Wow.
we haven't had any issues with it. But that was, yeah, we put, kind of glued box culverts together underneath that. And it was kind of an interesting project. I kind of enjoyed working on that.
So I know Adams County was significantly impacted by expansion of the,
West High?
West High. Will any of that reach into Franklin at some point?
I believe it will. It's going to be up by Connell, but whether it crosses the boundary, I don't know, but I think it will.
That'd be the
So-
East High, right?
Yeah,
East High,
East High,
excuse me,
yeah,
yeah.
East High.
Yeah.
Oh, the new
Where they're,
canals?
Yeah, the new
Yeah.
canal system. And so they ended up with some really difficult relationships by not
Yes.
doing the
Right, Ed.
the
Contact with the county.
the contact with the county, the improvements over the canals, and the county was stuck going to find federal money trying
Yep.
to do that. So it might be something for us to really pay attention
Yeah,
to.
no,
As
yeah,
well as
that's good.
as well as potentially even talking about congressionally directed spending towards some of these replacements over our existing system as well, perhaps, might be something to think about.
That's a
Yeah,
great idea.
no, that's something we'll have to keep an eye on, because, yeah, I do.
I know that has been a real challenge. I think they are getting the federal funding now to make those improvements, but
Yeah, it's interesting
They're catching
sometimes. I've been in this business a long time, and it happens on our side of it too. You know, people get project tunnel vision, and they don't think of the impacts to anything that's around them or who they're who they're going through and stuff.
and
So
I
they just-
believe what it
you know-
did is it impacted a processing plant that they got landlocked by that canal.
Oh.
That's what they couldn't get to.
that could have been too.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was,
So, yeah, it's corridor blindness. It happens. While I'm touching on the budget, like I said, I kind of emphasized what the road levy means to us operationally. And any reduction in the road levy is going to have an impact on level of service. I'll say right now that our current level of service is what I would deem adequate. It is not ideal. But if we do if there is a shift in the road levy, it's going to negatively impact maintenance and those things. We're going to have a reduction in level of service. There's just no way we can maintain even what I consider barely an adequate level of service now with a significant levy shift. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but I'm trying to be realistic. We can't continue to maintain the structure that we have in any kind of functional order long-term. And it's hard to see because roads and bridges don't deteriorate all the same all at once. And then suddenly, 5-10 years down the road, where we could have spent $40,000 in preservation, now we're spending $1 million in reconstruction. And that's the difference. People don't understand what preservation does. Preservation takes a paved road that you designed to last for 30 years and makes it last 45 or 50. And that's a big deal when you're talking about $1 million a mile to replace it. And I think that's kind of a conservative estimate anymore. When I started in the county 33 years ago, I think our rule of thumb was like $175,000 or $200,000 a mile. Now it's $1 million.
Can you show us where your maintenance budget is for the roads this year? For rock that we have approximately 400 miles of gravel road. How much in 2024, the year that we're in, how much did we budget to maintain those roads with rock?
Okay, so for gravel replacement, we've had budgeted, I believe, and it might be different. I don't know if it's been updated. I have 170,000 budgeted for that. Now that anyway, it's a little different. Everything is baked into that price. That's materials, equipment, personnel.
So when you pull all of this stuff out, if I measured it relatively close, I believe that's about, that's the number that I was.
Yeah, there are times, when we're, I have to make the decision, and really, it's more your decision.
I also want to make sure that everyone fully understands this. Your request is forecasting based off of having how many million in property tax?
4 million.
4 million in property tax. So that
That number can
170,000
change. Yeah, if we don't get the property tax.
So if you don't get that, you can look at what the previous years
Yes.
potentially look like.
So
Well, I think you'd have to look at this, what this number was sent in. What this number was sent in prior to the road levy shift last year. And I'm not sure what that number was
Yeah, I don't
in the
recall
original prelim.
But that's the level of service choices that,
Right.
So I'm kind of building to a point of looking at this 22, 23, 24, 24 adopted. So for perspective, we have 400 miles of gravelled road. That represents approximately 45 truckloads of gravel. So my question for you is, how thin can you spread that?
how thin can you spread? the
Because that
rock?
doesn't go very far.
It does not go very far.
Depending on what size rock you use.
Yeah.
Inch and a quarter, mine
Let's
is.
say you're using
Yeah,
sand.
just,
How
we
thin can you
start
get it?
putting-
So,
Put pit run and quarry spalls on it. I don't think anybody'd be real happy with that.
so with that being 45 truckloads of gravel fully burdened, how much maintenance in actuality is that? Is that can you get a full mile?
I doubt it.
Okay, so
Not
that's,
to any.
if we were to exaggerate,
Yeah.
we would say that's a mile.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so.
think we figured 50,000, I think it's 50, if I remember right. We did a little analysis, it costs about $50,000 dollars a mile for re-gravel.
That's about what I came up with. So doing that, this is 1/4% of the needs of our maintenance.
Right. Now typically, what we would like to do you like to re-rock on gravel roads about every 15 years. Now, we haven't been able to do that very proactively at all for the last 10 years, just because of our budget constraints.
So if we're doing 1/4% per year, and we need to do every 15 years, we're woefully behind.
Yes.
Okay, I was really just making the point that this right here is an unsustainable track for us to do maintenance on our roadways.
I would concur with that.
And I want to make clear, though, it is not solely because of a road shift. It is because of, if you look at charts, and there's some great ones out there, and we could demonstrate those, that as gas tax has gone up, the proportional share to the county road system has, the gas tax gone like that.
Yep. our
For
share of those.
preservation and maintenance for county roads has gone like this.
Yes.
It is, so the gas tax at the state level that has been being established, and it is going for things that are important. It's going for the state road construction system, so I don't want to downplay that. And we've been the big beneficiary of a lot of good state highway investment. However, it has not kept pace with the investment into county road preservation and maintenance. And we have study after study that demonstrates that. So part of this is compounded by a shift, for sure.
It
but
is.
the sole responsibility has not been that of the county not
Right.
fulfilling its responsibilities.
Just
So
basically trying to spread too little jam too far.
And that's really what I was trying to demonstrate, not the funding source, but to demonstrate this number right here is completely
Yeah,
inadequate
And every
to
county in
maintain.
the state would show you something similar to that. We're all short on that. And on the other side, on the paved road preservation, same story. We chip seal about 30 to 35 miles of road a year. We should be doing closer to 100.
Because we have roughly 600 miles.
Roughly 600 miles, and book on that is about every 6 years. We stretch it, we get good life out of our chip seals in this country because we have a good climate for it. We use, our aggregate is a decent, it's reasonably hard. It's not the hardest basalt in the world, but it's reasonably wears well. And we've learned to stretch this out from being 6 years to 8 to 10, depending on how much traffic it gets. The more trucks are on it, it's not a structural product. It's a surface preservation to keep water out and keep the road from deteriorating.
Those
So,
six,
we stretched them as far as we can stretch them.
those 600 miles, is that including paved and gravel? That's everything?
No, we have roughly just shy of 1,000 miles of road in the county.
Okay.
And it's a split about 60%, 40%, 60% paved, 40% gravel.
Now, we got a good relationship with the Bureau. They have created their own pile, and what we've talked is that, because when you go buy gravel from a gravel pit,
Oh, yeah,
You're
retail
paying-
prices is,
it skyrockets, but
Yeah.
have you made a
we're
deal
working
with the
with them
Bureau?
to hopefully, we would like to see, ideally, I'd like to see the county obtain its own,
Pit.
have a pit again. I think it's critical because, every 5 years, we can go on a big crushing contract
Yes.
and crush a bunch of material. And I think that would save the taxpayers quite a bit of money.
Significant. I
Significant
would,
amount of money.
I would love to see us pursue that because,
So we either, and we've been trying to find proper, we've been talking with DNR, we've been talking with Bureau and BLM and stuff like that. We're trying to look for a site to lease.
Placement of that site would be critical for the hardness of rock that you're looking for.
Right, yeah, I've crushed in a couple areas here over my career. Most of it, we've got pretty good rock, but there are pockets, especially you start headed west where it's
Porous.
got a lot of wormholes in it, and it's not a very good product. Best rock I ever crushed in was up in Columbia County. That stuff was as hard as it gets. Yeah.
That's hard on tires, too,
Amazing
'cause it
stuff. Too far away to haul.
maintains its sharp edges for a long time.
Yeah, oh, it was just, for like doing hot mix, it was just stuff worse like iron.
I visited with our interim administrator about, as we develop our comp plan, you know, mineral resource, in our zoning and so forth. So that's certainly something that we should, as we develop our comp plan, that we should, mineral
Yeah,
resource areas.
and it takes a long time to get from when you have the ground in your possession to get to where you can mine it. It's quite a process to certify for a pit. And that process hasn't gotten any easier over the years, I'm afraid.
Is it, if we were, just to say for argument's sake, let's say that we found a pit by, out toward like the Levy Landing area, there's some good hard rock out there. Is it cheaper to buy retail in Connell, or if we had the pit there to truck it?
Well, it would depend on what we got on crushing, but, you know, it could possibly end up being cheap enough for us to haul. We've been talking with Benton County. They have potentially have some surplus material, and we might be able to get that cheap enough that it's worth us going to get it. So
All right, I'm gonna be quiet.
I think,
hopefully I haven't spoken too much out of turn on stuff.
no, I think what will be helpful for the board, though, to more fully understand, you know, what doesn't get done. I don't know if it's for every 100,000 or whatever. If they go down a path of a road shift, what doesn't get done? And I think that, you know,
That's the question, is what don't you want us to do?
right. And I guess from your perspective as well is, you know, okay, if it's $500,000, you know, that what really does not get done.
Right. So
And you got to put that in context of what doesn't get done this year, but then perhaps what, you know, how does it impact the overall impact on the gravel road system and the, you know, the bridge system and the paved road system, et cetera. So it's something we can talk about offline, but
Right.
it's something to prepare them for.
Well, I can give you a little bit of just a general, I will tell you what facilities suffer the most because of, like I said, just in general, because of the fiscal environment that every county's in. That is local access roads, whether they be gravel or whether they be paved. There just isn't resources to deal with them.
Could you define for folks this? I know you have your
Yeah,
terms,
okay.
a local access
So,
road. Does,
so roads come in, and for us, for Franklin County, our roads are basically three types. They're major collectors, minor collectors, and then local access roads. And that has an impact on the kind of funding you can get for them, and it depends on how much traffic they have and how much freight that we're hauling down these roads has a lot to do with how they're classified. So local access roads is just your local, you know, there's a couple of farms on a road and they're hauling down it, you know, or maybe a residential Lammert or something that we're traveling to. So they're small, they're usually low in ADT, they're usually under 1,000 vehicles a day. So they essentially, there is no capital improvement grants for local access roads. The money does not exist.
Let me try to clarify this. Glade Road, major?
Major. Taylor Flats, major.
Okay. Altopia West,
I believe that's a major too.
it's an all-weather road.
Yeah.
Sagemore,
Sagemore's either a major or a minor, I'm not
I think
sure.
it's
I'd have to look.
it's all-weather road. It's-
Yeah, yeah.
So if it's an all-weather road, it's a major.
Generally speaking.
Okay.
Now, some of the minors might be all
Okay, so
weather
then we
capacity
get
too,
down
but
to Hope Valley Lane, Hooper Road, they're gravel, those are local access.
if it's gravel,
roads.
it's local access.
Okay.
But there's a lot of paved, and I can't remember off the top of my head what our mileage is for what we classify as local access roads. But, you know, we haven't been able to really send any resources to them for a very long time.
is it also true that if we do the shift, you potentially, that further diminishes monies that can go there to some of those maintenance of those types of activities, because you're also trying to utilize remaining funds for matching grants as
Right,
well.
that's
So
the other
we-
side
we-
of that, too.
We
is-
shift it to those, to leverage the resources that we can get, which is largely capital improvements.
Right.
Further taking money away from maintenance and operation. Which is a good, which is probably a good choice, that we leverage and we don't lose the opportunity to get those outside resources. But those outside resources rarely come from maintenance and operation and preservation.
Yeah, almost never.
So it's a kind of this interesting kind of, predicament.
It is, yeah. I know the County Road Administration Board's working hard to get the legislature to start looking at local access roads. Because it's, like I said, it's, a need in all 39 counties. There just isn't enough resources to go around. And,
It is incumbent, I think, on the board as you talk to legislators, though, and they start talking about whatever the new funding source is for the next, transportation package, that they don't leave out maintenance and preservation of the county road system. They did a major investment in the maintenance preservation of the state system in the last investment, but it was minimal, new money for maintenance and preservation of, a tremendous asset that we risk losing. So keep talking to your legislators about that.
And last year, I didn't see the load restrictions go up at all for.
No, we
gravel
had a
roads.
really good winter. We didn't really have too many soft roads,
Well,
so.
there was one point in time I thought they probably should have went up, but that Hooper Road
It
is.
depends on how long the event's gonna last. If we think they're gonna tighten up within a day or two, we might let it go.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, because when people need to move produce, they need to get it out of there, and if they're on, you can't do it.
Yeah, and it's, yeah.
So Hooper is one of the worst roads, because it's such in a low-lying area. The water table, I believe, is only about 3 foot deep, but it's pretty much rock through there. It's round rock. Is there any plans for that, to put a better base underneath of it to maintain it when we get into those wet environments?
We can look at it. Like I said, for roads like that, we don't have a lot of resources to address it. We just try and keep them going.
The one thing I noticed too is we're continually having a problem with rodents and water and tunneling, and you guys had to go out there again this year.
Yeah, there's
there was
some
another
areas where it's
hole
very
that-
active. Look at what's happened with the irrigation district this year. I mean, they've had, quite a few. I don't recall this many breaches ever, but some days it's like that. Moon had that problem a few years ago. It had a rodent and it blew out and it sunk a little bit and then it stabilized, thank goodness. And then, we were fine. We were able to repair it and open it back up. But yeah, there's all kinds of things that,
So, do you bring the 6-year transportation plan in front of the board on an annual basis?
Yes,
And
usually
when-
in June.
In June? Okay.
Yeah, because we're part of a metropolitan planning.
Okay.
So we're kind of on their time scale. Legally, counties don't have to have theirs in until September, I think, but we usually go with trying around the 1st of July is generally what we target for our transportation.
So
improvement
if
plan.
Commissioner Didier wanted to add that to the 6-year transportation plan for some significant capital project, that would be the time, right?
Yeah, this, certainly, yeah, if we, you give me clues where I can go find the money for it.
Yeah, well.
Get
Okay.
on the list first.
Yeah. All right. I think in the interest of time, we probably should move on to the last.
Oh, okay, so we too. I have my fleet manager here for if there are any particulars. I think you've all met Greg, so Greg Snyder does an excellent job of managing the fleet in the R&R. Let's see, I gotta find the right folder.
Tim, we've been kind of having a trend in the building and planning and stuff we've been talking about. We've been kind of having what the ask is for each individual department.
All of those are miscellaneous funds. All the ones we've been going over are miscellaneous funds that don't have an impact on current expense.
Okay.
And they're essentially self-balancing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the road fund ones.
Yep, correct.
But even building and planning that we were talking about.
Building and planning is in current expense. I'd have to go back and pull that up, which I certainly can.
You don't need to do it right now, just want to get that.
I think also Jim noted that if you refresh or restart Gravity, you might get back to how it had looked.
Yes, correct. It's fixed. Shout out to Ryan.
Okay, so motor vehicle fund is ER&R, our fleet. We also park materials in that fund. And how that works is they get purchased, they get put into ER&R, and then we buy them back. And keep an inventory of that stuff, so. If we had pits and quarries, that would be in that. It would be a kind of a sub-function of that. So I think I don't know what I think we're approximately what its value is on the ground right now. I think our fleet's, what, $3 million, $4 million?
Probably a little more than that, probably more up in the area of 7.
Replacement value is a lot more than that, but its price on the ground right now is right around that, so. Significant amount of resources. Its primary function is to serve County Road, take care of our vehicles and our equipment, and be our partner in getting stuff done.
There's several other departments that are in the ER&R. I believe that the coroner's is in that. Would you kind of just give a short description of how that works and do you guys run half of the rolling stock in the county is in the ER&R, or?
Currently in the ER&R is motor vehicle, all motor vehicles. We have prosecuting attorney has a vehicle in there. Solid waste has a vehicle in there. The WSU extension has 2 vehicles. And the planning department has 4 vehicles. Sheriff's Department doesn't have any vehicles in there, assessors, auditors, and the pool vehicles.
I think the coroner has vehicles, don't they?
He has 2 vehicles in there.
Yeah,
Is
what's the
there
size
any-
of our fleet now? Public Works is fleet, or County Road?
County road vehicles, I believe, is about 95 vehicles in the fleet with all the heavy equipment, SUVs, pickup trucks.
Is there any departments that have part of their stuff in there and part of them not? Or is it an all or none?
WSU extension has vehicles that are not in there. But I don't believe anybody else that has vehicles in ER&R has other vehicles that aren't in ER&R.
What's up with the sheriff? I think we have 1 sheriff's vehicle, don't we?
Just one, the big prisoner transport that they have, the
And the rest
big
of them are not in the
F-450 is
system.
in the ER&R for the sheriff's department.
Is that a truck or a van?
It's a big truck. It's a 450 with a cab extension on the back of it.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
it's-
the one that was spoken of the other day that has all the flats. That van, it's not that one.
Yeah,
the
it's in
big one.
corrections too, I think.
Yeah,
is where it
and
is.
it's a corrections vehicle.
So they manage all our fuel, parts. We have a shop staff, we have 3 mechanics.
4, we just hired another one. He'll
Oh, that's
start
right,
on the
we did.
4th. So we have 4 technicians. We have a parts and service person and then fleet manager.
So when somebody brings a vehicle to you to do a service on, how long does it usually take you to get that done?
Depends on what the repair is, obviously, but we are on an appointment schedule, so they make an appointment with us, so we're ready for them when they come. If it's an oil change or a PM service, usually an hour or 2, it's in and out, but not usually more than a day. If it's something big that we have to order parts, obviously, we have to wait for the parts to come in, but it's pretty quick turnaround at this point in time.
Who provides you the oil for your services?
Currently, we're using Coleman oil.
Coleman? And I know there's different grades. Are you using the top grade of oil? Okay,
Yes, sir.
yeah, that's what we do too. I mean, it costs a lot more money, but failures are least likely to happen.
We see the benefit in that, and we're currently looking at some of the new Dello 600 products for our diesels. So we're always looking at different options for the
Yep.
vehicles.
So on that, fuel, oil, tires, do you just go buy them? Do you buy them on contract? Do you negotiate pricing? How does that work?
All of our oils that we use are on a state contract, and tires as well. We use Tire Factory, which is on the state contract. We inventory a lot of the tires that we use on our pickup trucks and some on the bigger vehicles, some on the bigger semis, depending on the usage of them. But we're surrounded by those vendors, so our turnaround time is pretty quick, so we don't have to stock a lot of that stuff.
And your purchases are probably a lot better priced when you're going with the state contract, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
40 to 50% sometimes.
yes. One more question. Craig, you put in that, you got the bid for the parking lot at the HAPO. Could the ER&R fund lock up those necessities for that parking lot today? Or
No,
could
I-
you wait until you find a better buy? And is that on a state fund too, that you could buy that on so that it's there and then
We
they could?
usually, for us, we usually, in the winter, we bid out for our materials for chip seal, and that includes oil. So we'll get bids from the local vendors that provide it, well, sort of local, comes from all kinds of places. This time of year, if you're looking to do that parking lot for chip seal this year, the window's gone.
No, not
Oh,
this year.
not-
To
oh.
buy the products.
Oh, to
on the
buy the products.
anticipation of them going up or down. If they're gonna go down, we don't wanna buy, but I do this every year for diesel on the farm, and I wait for the timing, and I hit it good
You
here
can
this last
stockpile,
one.
yeah. If we do have a laydown yard, but it's a long ways away.
I'm just thinking, the contractor that bid this, would he be willing to work with us on these components?
You know,
if
we've
we
done
buy 'em?
contracts where we've had materials that we've supplied to contractors before in the past. So I think it could be worked out. I have something I have to look into to see what we can do.
It's just a great bid, and I hate to lose
I don't think
that.
it's a bid. I think there's an estimate.
Yeah.
of the
Yeah, it's
cost.
not, yeah.
Yeah.
What I
that was-
brought,
Yeah,
it's
there's-
just,
yeah, they're
and
not
mine was
bid.
just a
No.
life cycle cost analysis, just a comparison of the 5 things that I thought we could do to keep the parking lot going.
Yes.
So I wouldn't use mine as as a contract estimate.
But you've already said that you can't do it. Your crew can't do it, right? Or did you?
Yeah, I'd rather that they didn't. We got enough. It's very labor intensive for us. I'm pulling Blademan off.
Right.
So that means other stuff in the county doesn't get done when we do that.
I thought it was a bid.
Yeah.
But it was just an estimate
Yeah,
on
yeah.
your.
All 5 of
Yeah,
those are all
it's
estimates.
just an estimate that I
Yeah.
use to give you a comparison of how much things cost over time.
Okay.
Because each one of them has a different cost, not just to do, but how long they live and how long they're going to preserve the function of that parking lot before. And sometimes going with the easy in the long term is not the best answer because it's actually ends up being more expensive in the long haul.
I think the next step, though, is for us to go out to bid.
Yeah.
And the earlier we go out
Yeah,
to bid, the more
you know,
likely that, while contractors are,
Agreed.
they haven't locked up their work for,
Yeah, I find.
and the earliest point we might be able to is May, June is typically.
Oh, yeah, to actually physically do the work, I wouldn't start it anytime before May.
Right.
June's a really good month for it, and then you've got that nice summer weather that we get.
We also have the very interesting part of timing at a event center as well, so.
Right,
You-
and that
you've
could
got
be
it.
something
And-
that maybe
work
makes
around
this
it.
not as viable as it could. One, it's tender for quite a while. It takes a long time for it to completely cure out. It's a little bit fussier about tight radius turns on it, so if people are turning tightly on it, there are things we can do to help mitigate, you could do to mitigate it, fog seal it, maybe slurry seal it in the future would help with that.
And maybe
But
do,
it takes about 180 days for it to get of good sunshine and warm temperatures to cure out.
would we want to do it in stages then? Because I know that they're planning on a lot of events out there. It's going to be difficult to work around.
Yeah, I don't know how well that, I mean,
You could do it, you just pay more in mobilization.
yeah, and you're
several
probably gonna get a
mobilizations.
few, seams here and there. It's not like putting hot mix down there's, a little, make it look pretty good. Yeah, anything can be done.
It's probably a pull the Band-Aid off, do it all, let traffic have it for a little bit, and then
Yep.
put the paint down a little bit later.
Yeah,
But you're saying 180 days for it to get,
well, that's generally, with, depending on what oil you use, but it's like CSR2, it's good to drive on, within a matter of hour, an hour, maybe less. But the oil itself is emulsified, it's got water in it. So part of its process to completely cure out is over time you'll have a lot of sunshine and a lot of heat. And then that oil will bond better with that rock. And when I've seen chip seals in my 30 years of being around it fail is when they're done either really early in the season or really late and they don't, and moisture gets to it before
bonds.
It's cured.
cured out. And so that's why we like to approach it. The best time to do it is really between June and August. If you start chip sealing after August, I personally get a little nervous about it.
Yep.
Done it later in the season, done it in September, been successful, but I've also seen it fail more often in that period from September, late September, mid-October, which is about as late as you can find the product. Most everybody shuts down from that and they
But
move
back to the
oil
original
into-
question, we could use the ERNR fund to lock up the,
Possibly. Let me look into it and make sure
Okay.
that, I don't want to speak out of turn.
we can find a good buy and lock
Yeah.
them up. It would sure keep the cost down.
As far as material staging, we've got plenty of space there to, around back, all those barns
Oh,
being gone and
Yeah.
there's
yeah.
space
So,
for
yeah, that's something we
stock.
can look into and see. I don't want to, like I said, don't want to talk out of turn and
No.
steer us into something we can't do.
Just want to get you thinking.
Yeah, thank you. I
Craig,
will
it
be.
takes 3 years for Western Washington to get 180 days of sunshine, so I
I
don't know. They chip seal all the time.
Yeah. No, we're really lucky. That's why our chip seals last over here.
Sure.
We get that nice,
I'd like to make a correction also to the statement on the oil purchasing. We also use Connell oil and thermal fluids. And my parts gal is really good at going through the three of them to get the best buy for the county when we're purchasing, so.
I know that in the past, I've known you for quite a while, Greg, and I know in the past that you and I have compared notes, and you can buy for 40% plus less than I could buying the same equipment. So, yeah, I was always jealous of your buying power.
Okay. Do you all need a quick break before we've got two things left?
Just one, it looks like.
Yeah, we've got Susan, we've got two, we have HAPO and
Oh, HAPO,
RV.
yeah.
And Susan's here, so I'll probably do that first, but I don't, if anyone else has more questions for Craig or Public Works or anything, or,
Be
you
happy to
know,
answer 'em, or
fleet.
try to.
We may come back with more questions, particularly if there's discussions around revenue. So,
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Try and have the answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome. Thank you.
3 minutes.
Okay, okay. Yep, quick one. No more than 5.
I'm ready.
We're back from break and we will reconvene the budget meetings.
Okay, I think next is the RV park, and Susan Grant, who is the manager there, is joining us. So, Susan, why don't you just talk a little bit about the RV park, and then Tim's working his magic, and we'll kind of run through kind of any changes, particularly from fiscal year '24 to fiscal year '25. So, go
Good
ahead.
morning.
Good morning.
There's not many changes. I try my best to keep the park full and keep it clean and keep the customers coming and do my part there. Make the county some money. What questions do you have?
How many
I have-
sites
I
are
have-
there? Just kind of,
there's
just an overview of the park.
46 full hookup sites, and there's 13 power and water sites. I know I've brought it to your attention before that I would love to make those power and water more of a full hookup and more desirable, so people stay more towards the winter time, because those kind of fizzle out during the winter.
Are those
And,
13 sites the ones that are over, that are south of the,
South, yes, of the parking
and they
area.
do have water and power hookup?
Have water and power.
Oh, I didn't know they had that.
If you recall, on the map, that site map from the HAPO event the other night, it kind of makes an L, is kind of the RV park
Right.
component. And do you allow parking on the other side as well, dry site as well, or it's just the power and water side?
Just my side is the power and water.
Yep.
So, across the street, you're talking about the
No,
ball
Yeah.
field? Or,
Across the street, then the ball field area has some dry RV parking.
the city doesn't say
city.
anything about?
Yes, yes.
Yes, during softball
Yeah.
games, they tend to park overnight there, or not, well, overnight, the weekend. And that's just because the parks are full in the area. They're all full. So they park all the way from Columbia Sun over in Richland. They park Horn Rapids just to come to play softball. So they come from all over.
And then budgetarily for this year, so one of the things that we are recommending is an adjustment to this position. I think as we went through kind of compensation in really looking at the at the comparables, is that this position really does work autonomously. It really does not work under the direct supervision of someone. It really is an autonomous position. It has a set of responsibilities of managing both the camp host. It manages contracts, obviously collects revenues of reservations, et cetera. But when you start to look at the managerial role versus just the performance of a duty, it does shift a little bit of the responsibility. So as we were looking at, and Margot can come up and speak as well, she assisted in kind of looking at this. I will say this was not driven by a request of the employee. It was really driven by a kind of our overarching look at positions. So, Margaret, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think you pretty much covered it all, but yeah, I concur with everything. But I can answer any questions you might have, or try.
And the fiscal adjustment is $2,734. This is not a current expense budget, which sometimes shouldn't make any difference in how we classify it, but just wanted to make sure you realize it doesn't have an impact into the county current expense fund.
I don't really have a question, but a comment. I appreciate you both looking into that. That is a responsible thing that we need to do, and appreciate you identifying that autonomy and what that she does on our behalf, and appreciate you looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can barely see it, but she's really been doing that since 2022, when we had the last managers of HAPO separate from the county. So it's been a few years.
It's really interesting. There's just a lot of different. It's hard to describe just what the position entails, because you're working with vendors of credit cards. You're working with so there's this whole side of a business operation. You are working on the maintenance and operation and having contractors that to do that work. You're working with customers, you're working with assuring, and this park has a lot, it has a lot of 100% occupancy periods, so it's good. The one thing I think, and you may talk about this under revenue, we will probably bring to you a revenue increase. One of the things I think is important that we also don't, what I will say, necessarily undermine the private sector as well, because there is a private sector, so we also stay competitive within that marketplace. And so Susan has done a kind of a market analysis of those other private RV parks in the area so that we stay within their range and don't drop significantly below it either. So.
And Susan, are we still on a 6-month rotation?
Absolutely, yep.
Do we need to stay with that? Why are we on that 6-month limit?
It's a good policy. I mean, you don't have the permanent people that come in and kind of take over the park, and then they
Right.
take ownership of the park, and it's nice to have the flow.
Okay.
It's a good,
You don't hear a lot of complaints from the people that are,
some complaints, but I explained to them that, we're a temporary housing, we're not permanent housing, we're transitional.
so we've got a master plan going on and we don't know where it's going, but what about an expansion of the RP park?
I would love it. I
Would you
have
be
a
able to
map.
handle it?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So how many more spots do you think you could handle comfortably without being overwhelmed?
You can add it on. I've already mapped it out. If you remove those horse barns back there, I can put 32 spots back there. The parking lot across the street, from like adjacent, from the Holiday Inn, there could be quite a few over there, a lot over there.
And I think what you heard in the master planning process was, is the RV park there to support the
Events.
events versus how it's primary full or almost virtually full. You hold a couple sites available,
Yeah.
but it's virtually full on those 6-month long-term, so it doesn't really support the events. And so do you create a kind of an opportunity for an RV park that then is more transient in nature, that probably would flip every different days? And that's a different management activity as well than managing kind of a more stable population.
So if we did go to that where it was just for the events, would there be an increase per night? Or would it be the same as the RV?
We do have a overall plan that I need to put together. We need to get a resolution to you here so I can give them notice. But yeah, we're going to increase the monthly rent and the daily rent.
And nightly
So-
rent. And so you might think about, do you charge differently for nightly costs? Again, if you want 100% cost recovery, then you manage it like that business for 100% cost recovery.
And I feel that if all the other parks are full, we're not really in competition. We're just trying to satisfy the need. And I think that maybe that's something that we really should be looking at. Now, you said that parking lot behind the Life Quest, the whole parking lot?
In front of it. I mean, but there's some major repairs that would need to be done, because right now I'm dealing with one shower and a set of restrooms at the end, but only one shower to support what we have right now. And it's a struggle sometimes. There's a lot of the RVs that are fully equipped, but then you get these softball players that come in and they, the children come in and they need a shower. There's a renovation, and I'd like to make those other ones a full hookup. I costed it out a couple of years ago, and you guys didn't kind of go on board with that, but but I have the money
It's a
in
different
reserves.
board now. It's a different board now.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and it might be something you start to wait till after the master plan and
Right.
start thinking about it.
Yeah. So, Tim, can we go back and look, what it was the total revenue off of this last year? I'm not even gonna get it up on I just let you do it on the big board so everybody can see it.
So with the full hookups, that includes their electricity, or is that separate?
No, we charge electricity for the full hookups, just the nightlies, we do not, that's why the rate is a little bit more. So a daily rate for a monthly is like $22, and then, overnighter would be more like in the $55.
So there's a separate meter for the monthly,
All those 46 sites are metered,
Okay.
yep.
yes.
So for somebody that's gonna be there for 6 months, they have to go put the electricity in their name?
No, no.
No.
They're metered, I check the meter when they move in, and I check it
Got
at
it.
the end of the month.
Got it.
And charge them, it's a straight pass-through, so whatever the city charges me, it's just a pass-through on the 0.083%.
So Tim, I'm looking at this, and it's 2024 adopted budget was 400 and, at the bottom, 404?
Correct.
And then 2025 is projected to be 1 million.
It's including the beginning fund balance.
Skim down, you'll see a
carry
big
forward.
contingency of,
I have like 700,000 in the contingency.
there you go.
Now, this does not
yes.
recognize the proposed increase that we came up.
It doesn't.
up with. It does not.
Yeah, doesn't
So
include.
probably another 30,000 on top of that.
Okay.
So what is the net revenue?
I mean, we're actually planning on collecting during the year 424,900, outside of the increase that they're talking about. And comparing that to previous years, in 2022, we brought in 374,000, 2023, 392,000. And then budgeted 424 for
So this,
And then go down to
2025.
expenditures.
is this money staying in this fund? It
Yep.
just stays there? Okay.
There's $1,010,000 here, which includes, let me back out the,
The revenue and the 700,000.
so you have 147,384 plus 82,000.
129?
So 229,384.
That 82 is the
It's a transfer for HAPO operating subsidy.
for HAPO. So the RV park operational cost is
Correct. It's
$147,000.
correct.
That additional 80,000 is what's paying for must be a portion of that 160.
Correct.
That we transfer. Where's the other 80 come from?
It's the rental car excise tax fund, I believe.
So you transfer 160 to support, HAPO. 80 of it comes from the RV park. So the operations is 147 and your revenue was 424.
Up to good work, Susan.
I do try to keep it
Oh,
full.
you're doing great.
And I shuffle and make it better for everybody, and I do my best. So,
Thank you so much.
And I think you enjoy it.
yeah. I like
can
meeting new
tell.
people and hear their travels, and I'm like, yeah. So I have a lot of repeat customers, a lot of happy customers. Yeah.
I would just, Susan's been great. It's a much different dynamic of having been managing a campground and managing a campground where there's ball fields. Youth events are fine, but when you start getting a bunch of adult events that are camping on a weekend when it's warm and they have consumed all day, you are managing
Consumed water?
You're managing a much different
The
group.
hockey customers?
Okay, probably. You're managing a much different group than those that are there, that they live there, where it's not a recreational experience that they are out to enjoy their weekend. Much different group.
So are you a referee too then? You got to break up people and
No, I have a daycare center in the front of my lobby there. No, not really. It's fine.
Thanks, Susan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Margot.
you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
coming up.
absolutely.
And HAPO, we can go through it. It really, you saw the 2023, what the 2024 projection. I think you've been seeing the projections. Maybe not, we can run through it. But,
I'd love to just see
Okay.
real briefly.
yeah, and these will need to be updated. These were what were put in, back in, September?
Oh, it was July, August.
July, August. And so what you're now seeing that they're projecting, I think, 2.1 million in revenue is
Yep.
what they are now projecting. They were projecting 1.8, I think it was what their revenue projections was when they entered this. They were able to secure revenue this year that was closer to 1.6, I think it was, for 2024, plus the contributions from the county and the city. So, and that's what we reviewed last on Tuesday night with the, was it Tuesday night with the HAPO Advisory Board, whatever night that was. And really what that included, and expenditures would then be balanced with the concept that we would be utilizing that extra, kind of that 320 to pay for those capital improvements. So that short-term capital, the restroom renovation, the carpet, the painting, kind of those, that set of short-term improvements that they would be able to get at. So, so then if you skim down, they're expecting $2 million in expenditure. I think, I think the goal continues to be that they will be, revenue neutral. So, but that includes our transfer, and it includes the city transfer,
How big is our transfer?
160.
160.
But it's revenue neutral with the improvements taking place, correct?
Yes, and our revenue transfer does not come from current expense, as you heard from Tim. It comes from both the rental car tax and the RV park. So it's not a
RV park.
current expense transfer.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it's important for folks to realize that while it is a county county contractual operation, we have, HWL that is managing it on our behalf. They are paid a monthly maintenance fee. They pay, it's all processed through, though, operationally through the county budget now, and Tim can talk a little bit more about that. He, has worked very hard for the accountability portion of this. And then subsequently to that, it's really important that we're not taking away from other county operations.
Right.
To have the HAPO Center right now, in terms of operations.
So we talk about the HAPO fund. Where the master plan is being paid out. Where does that fund stand at? Is that, what was the deal? Was he getting that?
We currently have $600,000 in
That's with-
the HAPO operations fund right now.
That's within $200 of where I thought it was, so that's pretty close. Thank you. Thank you for just briefing me on that.
So on that, 600,000, there's talk in their master plan that they want to improve the ice rink, and they want 300,000, I believe. I think it would be since we're the sole owners of that, I guess it wouldn't be, because that's Pasco and us together, right? Fund,
That,
We draw out of that.
we
Both of
don't-
us got
yeah,
to
we
replenish
can't
it.
pull out of the HAPO
No.
fund to do that.
No,
But
we can't.
I believe that we could use .09 funds for that.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
As long
keep,
as the county continues to own it, it's a economic development asset.
Well, as we got just a couple of minutes here, is there a chance that there's anything on our, that was on the docket for the afternoon, the review?
it's just miscellaneous.
So I have this afternoon, Benton County Emergency Services, the SAT group meeting from 2 to 4. Asked to be excused from this afternoon.
Is there any review of miscellaneous funds or other things that we postponed? We haven't postponed anything.
We pretty much covered all the major elements. I think most of pretty much all the miscellaneous funds that I think the board would have some interest in. So I think we've talked about, well, I don't know if we talked about like the mental health fund much at all. I mean, we can go back to a couple of the commissioner funds if,
We talked about it briefly. There's a little over 8 million there. We've committed 5.47.
And I think we've talked about, I think what might be helpful for Tim and I, we're going to meet Tuesday afternoon to really kind of, I'll reviewing notes. We've talked about seeing how much of we might be able to dedicate from that fund for other purposes, such as our therapeutic court. Are there elements of our therapeutic court that we could be, you actually heard Benton County, spends $1 million out of their
Yes.
we're not going to get that high because that's most all in the Superior Court. Our district court has been able to secure grants, but that didn't include the cost of prosecutor or public defense. So that might be some funding that we can, dedicate out of that. Yeah, that's where I knew I saw the landfill closure fund somewhere.
yeah, so there's the landfill closure trust fund. This came up earlier today. I'm estimating that we're going to roll over about $1,000 into next year.
If we check with Sean and if we're free and clear of this, we can close this out, you think?
Yeah, I think we could move that money to current expense.
So we've identified like 3 or 4 now that are things that we don't use, but you have to continue to
Monitor.
provide accounting for, correct?
Correct. There was, let's see. The last real spending, looks like the last spending was in 2022. We spent $22,000 in there.
I would be of the opinion if there's funds that are no longer being used, for instance, the one was identified that hasn't been used since the early 90s. Let's clean it up, because that way you no longer have to maintain a.
I like that idea.
Yep, I think we indicated we probably, in the budget resolution, we would simply amend it to close funds and,
Yep.
and reference back the original, if we can find the original
Yeah.
resolution that created them.
Here's the rental car excise tax fund that we were talking about that funds a portion of the HAPO subsidy. So right now I have it budgeted at $93,000 coming out of this fund for the HAPO operating subsidy, but it sounds like there may be some new numbers for the HAPO center that I need to that need to be entered in Gravity.
And how much is in that fund?
$352,000 is expected to be there at the beginning of next year.
After you take out the money?
No, that would be what it would start the year with, and then there's $150,000 estimated of sales tax.
It would still grow.
Yeah.
Yep, correct. Yeah, I'm anticipating that we'd end the year at about 409,000, 2025. The law library, I think,
Are
was,
there any other eligible uses in that fund, or is it just for, can't remember what the,
Rental car excise tax.
yeah, it's a finite set of uses.
Yeah, I think it's, I feel like it's lodging related, like hotel motel kind of stuff, but I'd have to go back and,
They're different,
look
there were
at the-
different kinds
Yeah.
that could be adopted, so we'll have to look at that.
I'm just
We'll look
wondering
at
as
the
far as
record.
the HAPO Center, as they develop the master plan, if there's, well, we'll just have to wait for the master
Yeah,
plan.
it certainly, I mean, it can go right now to Happel Center, so I know anything more there could, I was just
Yeah.
That's where my thought process was, is maybe that as a part of the development of the
Could you
master
go
plan.
to, and it might have been a time when I was not paying as much attention as I should have. Could you go to the park,
Parks and Trails?
and yes, when I'm trying to find the impact fee revenue.
That was in county roads, I believe.
Nope, it's here.
is it this one that
Yep,
you're
this is
referring
the
to?
one.
What is this?
So,
Park acquisition capital.
yes.
225 rolling over, a few, not a ton of, I mean, there's some impact fees, not a ton. And we haven't spent anything in, I don't think we've spent anything in recent memory.
Help me with the 441. The 441, 600. Help me what that is.
Where are we seeing 441?
The bottom.
Oh, it's the accumulation of all of the revenues and expenses. We had we had the revenues as
Okay,
negative
okay.
previously, so they were
Okay.
offsetting, but right now they're showing
So
up
there
as
is only
positive again.
220,000 in funds available. We expect 235.
Yeah, 235 through the end of
I'm
next
not
year.
sure much is being even spent.
Nothing's being spent. I don't think we've used this fund in, I don't know if we've even used it since I've started, so.
What can it be used for?
So I believe that we could potentially use it for, I don't remember what it's called in Basin City, the park. Or we could fund something with the Corps at like Levy Park.
And what we'll need to look at is when you adopted this, because you say it looks like there might be some by areas, which
Oh, like a sub area.
which will be a real problem probably for us, because we're not collecting much money for parks in some of those areas. We'll have to see, because there's impact fees in different.
Yeah, and Craig may have spoke on it previously in a previous year. I feel like I think Matt Mahoney, the previous Public Works Director, has spoke on this fund before, but I don't remember all
Yeah,
the.
so for example, if the county chose to do something in partnership with someone, or you can take a look in where else it could go, but into a capital improvement for Parks and Recreation, park facility.
It sounds like Susan needs capital improvement for the showers and stuff. I think that's something that we
Possibility,
should
have to
probably.
have to see what how your,
Not this fund. I'm talking about.
oh, yeah,
Out
yeah.
of her fund.
It could be,
We should probably update that bathroom and shower facility if we're gonna expand. I don't know, even if we maintain the current, we need that for her.
But there's a county revenue guide that's put out by, I think Eric's mentioned it to you before, but that has put out by MRSC in conjunction with the State Auditor's Office, I believe. But it has a lot of really good information as far as what revenues can be spent on, and just pretty much descriptions on just about every revenue that counties receive. And so I'm sure that this is one of those things that's talked about in there, and probably has some pretty good detail as far as what we can use it on.
What I think will be interesting is we'll have to find the ordinance that established this impact fee collection to see if it did do any division of, you got to hold it within a district? Was it collected by Commissioner
So I had asked Derek that question before he left, and he looked into it, and his response to me is he didn't believe that there was any jurisdictional,
Okay.
restraints on it, but we should look into it.
Frankly, I was quite surprised Franklin County had a park impact fee.
I've wondered about why we have something
I'm
that we
really
don't.
surprised you don't have a county park system?
We did formerly have a park,
Yeah,
the
Chiawana, right?
Chiawana
Yeah,
previously. And I've been told that I believe it used to formerly house a zoo back years
You
ago.
wanted it?
I believe that's what it was, that it did at one time.
No.
I think I remember it when I was like 5 or 6. that Donkeys and.
Do you guys ever remember a zoo at Chiawana?
I didn't have no time to come into town. My dad had a boat cracked on my back changing water.
Is there any interest in getting back into the zoo business?
Yeah, I don't see the county.
you want to go to town? I'm like, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, no animals.
4 o'clock comes awful early.
No.
Yeah, if it may be something that you all want to think about even.
Zoo, no.
No, no.
No.
An impact fee, is it still something you think the county should be collecting an impact fee for?
Who's paying it?
So when someone develops in the unincorporated area,
Okay.
they're in it's probably on new construction. I don't think it's probably on
The problem is who maintains it?
the park.
Yeah,
Well, we're not using it.
that's what I'm
So,
saying.
Yeah,
So what you're saying is dissolve it, quit collecting that from the new
Yeah,
construction.
Potentially.
yeah.
it's-
Potentially, if you're not gonna get into the parks development,
Yeah,
Yeah.
activity.
I don't think that's something we should be in.
The
I
interesting,
thought maybe that you'd want to put a park out there around the pond that's close to your, no?
yeah,
You could donate that?
I am thinking about an RV park though. Seeing that the RV parks are all full, that
My
piece of
wife
ground.
keeps telling me, we need an RV park.
All right, let's land this plane.
Yep.
We gotta get to another meeting.
but thank you, thanks, Tim, for.
Thank you.
Yes,
For all
thank you,
your
Tim.
work and preparation and working with all the departments and transitioning to Gravity, which I know was, and Ryan, who's probably listening, for all the work that he did, and Jeff, your whole group. So, for me, it really has helped me understand, this week has helped me understand the county budget and more about the departments and stuff. And frankly, it's been a while since I've sat through a complete county budget, obviously, but the board was really engaged, really appreciate, your really thoughtful engagement and the work that everyone came before you. We've got a lot of work to do, I know that, but I thought it was really pretty productive.
I was excited to see a couple, I know that there's more to go, but a couple of the opportunities that potentially presented themselves with the commissary thing, and I think there's out some of the answers surrounding.
And I'd just like to say thank you to Tim and Teresa, but Eric, I want to thank you because I've been through 6 years of this now, and you have made this actually fun.
I'll say the same thing. I've only been through 3, but it's been,
You have made
Enjoyable.
this actually pleasant to go through. Before, it was grueling. I don't know how you feel, Tim, but this has been one of the best, the best one I've ever sat through. And just in you engaging and the different directions and leading us into possibilities, it's
Refreshing.
uplifting.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're not letting you leave.
We can vote on it.
Make sure we have a different definition of fun. I do appreciate that.
He was gonna be changing the gearbox on a circle, so this is.
No, that's done. The water went off yesterday. It's done.
Tim, thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank
And
you.
we do have a lot more work to do, so.
Yes.
Yep, thanks.
No.
No, we're going to adjourn,
And I think we're done for the day.
yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.